On a beautiful sunny morning in early spring 2017, a group of community volunteers gathered in an unlikely spot along the banks of the Elbow River in downtown Calgary. Equipped with shovels, rakes, buckets, and more, this group came to give a riparian makeover to a small stretch of heavily used and abused riverbank. But the project didn't start there. Months of planning and collaboration took place in the background before a shovel could even pierce the ground. Our goal with this project was to naturalize a highly used urban riverbank and restore some riparian function to it. This project is part of a demonstration, Street to Stream initiative, led by Cows and Fish, the Alberta Riparian Habitat Management Society, and the Alberta Low Impact Development Partnership, in partnership with the City of Calgary. In this video, we will discuss some of the aspects involved in the planning and execution of an urban green space riverbank naturalization project, as well as some of the challenges you might face. This project took place at the end of a residential cul-de-sac in a small but heavily used green space along the Elbow River in the downtown neighborhood of Mission. This little piece of bank was not a pretty sight to begin with. It was mostly covered in shallow-rooted grasses, a few non-native invasive shrubs, and a lot of weeds and bare ground. The site had little to no preferred deep-rooted native vegetation to provide natural rebar, filtration, or wildlife habitat. Parts of the bank had been eroded in a previous flood, and issues were being exacerbated by people and pets walking along the bank to access the river. If your goal, like ours, is to help restore more natural vegetation, it's important to take a look at the nearby undisturbed areas to understand what the area could or should look like with different management and some restoration success. In this case, we wanted to promote native vegetation, and the city wanted to maintain access to the green space, but also deter river access and trampling of the bank. At every visit, people were seen using the area, and this suggested that it was a highly desired location, and so we needed to figure out how to develop a plan that recognized that in the future, people were going to keep using at least some of the site. The plan we developed maintained access to the park bench and views of the water while trying to minimize bank access and thus prevent further erosion. Understanding your goals, as well as the needs of the community, is important when planning any project. An important part of the planning phase of all riparian restoration projects is to make sure you have all the necessary permits you may need well in advance. Permitting can be a time-consuming process, so it's important to allow ample time for this. Once you have your plan in place, the next step is to contact your local government office to check what permits you may need. Since riparian projects take place along the shoreline or bank of a water body, in Alberta, Provincial Water Act, Public Lands Act, or Federal Fisheries Act approvals may be needed. Regulatory approvals can take a long time to process and therefore should be considered early in the planning stage. Depending on the scale and location of your project, other municipal, provincial, or federal permits may be required. In our case, we did not plant anything on the bank itself and stayed above the 2-year high water mark, meaning permits were not required from the province or from the federal government. We were fortunate to work directly with the City of Calgary to make sure all the necessary municipal approvals were in place. Project materials consisted mainly of rooted trees and shrubs as well as grass plugs, all of which were sourced from local nurseries that carry native species. For any riparian planting project, it is best to use locally acclimatized native plant stock raised in a local nursery, since local stock will likely be best suited to your climatic conditions. Be sure to check with local plant suppliers early in your planning process to make sure they have enough stock for your project. For urban projects, don't forget to do a line locate search to mark and locate all buried utility lines at least 1 week before you proceed with any digging or planting activities. In Alberta, you can do this by using the Alberta One Call or Click Before You Dig websites. In our case, we had several different underground lines to contend with. each of which had different activity and also planting setbacks and requirements, meaning we had to adapt our plan accordingly since certain deep-rooted species could not be located within a certain distance of the lines. Another site preparation activity is to remove weeds like burdock and other undesirable species before you plant to reduce competition from these plants. This includes removing invasive shrubs like cotoneaster. To do this, you need to remove as much of the root ball as possible. This can take some muscle power and large pry bars. It's important to infill holes with topsoil where necessary after large invader shrubs are taken out. In our case, we used a biodegradable erosion control matting product to help stabilize the topsoil in the short term. Several species of shrubs, including willows, were planted on the site. This is where a detailed plan comes in handy. Understanding the specific moisture requirements and overall size of the plants allows you to better meet the needs of both the site and your plants. Shrubs were spaced accordingly to growth size and in order to prevent competition between individuals as well as create an aesthetically pleasing plan. Because of the location and expected ongoing use of the site, creating a natural-looking layout and design was not desirable, but rather a thoughtfully laid-out pattern which maximized the natural features of each species for size, density, to reduce access in some locations, color and access, meaning species with thorns or prickles can be strategically placed. The area that was to be converted from lawn grass to a more native grass mix included species of wheatgrass and needlegrass. First, the area was raked to remove grass carryover, known as litter, to provide seeds better contact with the soil between existing grass plants. The area was then top-dressed by adding topsoil before the seeds were spread by hand. Native fescue grass plugs were planted to add biodiversity to the site. Unlike your standard lawn grass species like Kentucky bluegrass, fescue grasses have deeper roots that improve soil moisture infiltration and stabilization. The fescue plugs were planted through the erosion matting into the freshly applied topsoil. The entire area was watered to ensure good soil moisture following planting. On our first visit to the site, it was obvious that beavers could be a problem for the restoration of the site since most, if not all, of the existing shrubs along the bank had been chewed by beavers. Although beavers are an integral part of riparian ecosystems, when you're trying to restore woody plants at a small, localized site, they can reduce your effectiveness. Because of the size of the site and closeness of the plants to each other, it was not possible to wire each individual plant to protect it from beavers. Instead, we decided to fence the entire length of the site along the river so that beaver would not be able to access the area, allowing for healing and growth. This approach had a twofold benefit. Not only would beavers not be able to access the site from the water, but humans would not be able to access the water from the site, resulting in less trampling and physical damage. We installed fencing of 1 meter tall stucco wire held in place by rebar posts. If your budget allows, the best fencing for beaver proofing is 14-gauge galvanized steel wire with a 5 centimeter mesh size installed to a minimum height of 90 centimeters. You have to spend all this time and hard work planning and planting, so now what? Ideally, you should monitor and care for the site over the next year or two when the plants are becoming established. Having a committed landowner and local partners or volunteers can be very helpful with this. In this case, the city committed to watering the plants as well as replacing plants that don't survive. The city is also committed to working with users and community groups to address ongoing issues with recreational use and riverbank access. The city has installed signage at this site to help inform users of the restoration project intent. Educational signage is an important part of community engagement and outreach, hopefully fostering better long-term stewardship of the area. Weeding and watering are going to really help ensure that your project succeeds, and so having a committed landowner and local partners is important. These plants won't have extensive root systems at the beginning, and by providing water, you're giving them an extra boost they need, especially during dry spells. Removing weeds regularly in the area is also critical, as they have the ability to quickly grow and overshadow and outcompete your shrubs. Once established, these native plants will be able to maintain themselves with their extensive root systems and will provide important riparian functions, including soil stabilization, erosion protection, habitat for birds and wildlife. Ultimately, this benefits us all by helping to better protect our water quality and our quality of life. Riparian restoration projects require a lot of cooperation and teamwork from numerous community groups and other organizations. Without them, it wouldn't be possible. We would like to thank everyone involved with this project, as well as our funders. For more information and other helpful videos, please visit our website at www.cowsandfish.org.